Research has taken me around the world. I do brain research work back home in Canada still, Vietnam. I've been in Mexico, Hong Kong, and Spain, and so it's been fun. I just got back from Canada a week ago. I was up there for a week working with kids, and it was funny because it was the week right after the snow and ice here, and I go home and it's minus 30, and kids are outside on the playground skating. And I was just like, we canceled school last week because of this. So, that's funny. They just like get outside, like they get their snowsuits on and they go outside and they start skating. I'm like, that doesn't happen in Texas. So what I put together is just a bunch of topics. We talk about positive parenting, and if you just want to click to the next one. These are what we're going to kind of cover today. The big two people get a kick out of are these two. I'll just tell you a heads up, hang on. I know last time I was here we kind of touched on different things, but what I'm going to start with is brain development and brain strengthening. What do you guys do as parents at home to help your child's brain develop and strengthen? I will tell you right now, our children right now, especially in the United States, officially have the weakest brains we've ever known in human evolution. Why?
Because we're entitled, society gives us everything we
So
want.
that's
It's at
one.
our fingertips.
I'm entitled and I'm bubble wrapped because nobody lets me struggle a bit and fail.
Okay.
But there's another one, and it's this, technology. The more technology we use, the weaker my brain becomes. Literally, I'll kid you not, with the brain research we've done for 9 years on screen time, every time your kid is in front of a screen, their brain gets weaker. And so if you don't, when they're off the screen, do things to get their brain back and strengthened, my brain never recovers, it just goes further down. It's also a reason why we're seeing more dementia, Alzheimer's types of things pop up in the world too. Yes, sir?
Do you mind if I take a screenshot of that?
Oh, wait, you get a copy of this actually.
Okay.
So I'm gonna PDF this, send it to Misty, you guys get a copy of it. Oh yeah, you get everything I get. Just promise you'll share with other parents. So if you wanna go to the next one. So I tell people positive parenting is kind of an oxymoron in terms, because positive versus negative, we have to understand and be honest about the negatives in order for us to create a positive life for our kids. We have to understand that diets have to change. We have to understand that there is a negative impact of screen time on their brain, so we can change it so it can be positive. The ironic part is you go to these positive things and it's all about, oh, good stuff here, good stuff here. But if all we do is look at all the good stuff, you don't focus on the things that are actually changing your kids' brains. The fact they don't get outside to play as much as they used to. They're not playing, period, as much as they used to. They're in front of screens way more than they should be every day. Those are the negatives that are impacting your child's life and brain development, that when you know about it and understand it, you start changing it, now you got positive outcomes coming on you. So I tell people, you can't be positive without dealing with the negatives too. And so I tell people this, your child doesn't always have to be happy. It's about your child growing up to be healthy, mentally and physically. It doesn't mean your child always gets what they want or they're always happy and joyful. It's about when I'm having a hard time, do you let me sit in that and let me work it out? And you're there beside me to help me work it out. Or are you saving me? Are you fixing it for me? Because you don't like to see me sad and upset. No parent likes to see their kids sad and upset, but you realize that's the only way I develop as a human being. If I don't get a chance to just be miserable sometimes and not be comfortable, I don't get to be a good human being. I actually grow up to be an anxious, depressed, and usually an entitled human being. And so there's a lot of things to look at about, it's not about always having your child happy. When the times are tough, how do you let me work through it and you guide me on how to work through it? I think that's important in our lives nowadays too, so we go to the next one, please. So, that's hard to see, but it's brain development strengthening. So I'm going to share with you the top things you can do as a parent to strengthen your child's brain and to have, especially in elementary. So birth to age 6, these things are the top things we know of today that help with brain development. From 6 to 19, they are the top things we know of to date that help my brain get stronger, get my synapses stronger, so my dendrites grow and branch out more, so more learning can come in, more connections happen, my academics get solid, my behavior gets better. And so these are the top things. So we're going to start with the first one. Number 1, play. The more your child plays, the better their brain is developed. The ironic part is, if you take a look, it's the only thing we know of to date that the more I play, it's the only thing we know of that builds the foundation for creative thinking and problem solving. And the one thing that I'll tell you children do not have anymore is creative thinking and problem solving. It's because we don't let them play anymore. You can't play. Oh, no, I need you to have top grades, so forget play. You're going to do more work, which is one of the worst things we have ever done to our children. More work and more academics does not make my brain stronger. It actually weakens my brain. Because my brain is a muscle. And so my muscle has to be strong in order for me to carry the weight of academics and carry the weight of learning new behaviors and social skills. So think about it. How do you make muscles stronger?
Working out.
You work them out. Working my brain out doesn't mean here's more reading, here's more math, here's more science. That actually bogs it down and puts more weights on the bar, and what happens with my brain? It can't lift it. So what I'm going to do is I'll share some strong brain activities with you today. I don't have it in here, but I'm going to give you some. So what I need you to do is I want you to hold out your hand, point with your finger, rotate your finger clockwise. As you're rotating your finger clockwise, rotate your wrist counterclockwise.
Oh.
I told you it looks like bad proctology exam. Now here's another one. Ready? Roll your neck in any direction. As you're rolling your neck in that direction, roll your tongue inside of your mouth in the opposite direction. Here's the kicker, parents. I have a whole list of these. There's about 60 of them. You do these for only 10 seconds. You do them for 10 seconds. It's about attempting it, not perfecting it. Your child has to attempt it, because what it is they're activities that pull your brain in different directions, and the more uncomfortable I make my brain, the stronger and more developed it becomes. Do you realize that just keeping me comfortable and not challenging me doesn't make me smarter? It actually makes me dumber in the long run. It causes my brain to go weak. You got to challenge your kids every day. You got to stretch that brain as much as you can. The only way the brain grows and develops is when it's challenged. Problem is, when we're challenged, what do we do nowadays? Ooh, I don't like that. And I walk away. And so there's interesting things. So play is number one. Get your kids out there and play. You know what we found out through the studies in play? It's the number one predictor of academics. The more a child plays, the stronger their academic outcomes. It's actually the number one precursor to academic success. What's the one thing we don't do anymore in our society? Look at recess in schools. We've yanked that out of schools too. I go home to Canada and they have 4 recesses a day for 20 minutes each and an hour for lunch. And whatever you do is you eat, you go outside and play for the rest of your lunch period. They start at 9, they end at 3. That's the school day. Canada has the highest literacy rate of any country in the world. We're at 99% right now. Play. Let them play. The number one way for your child to remember what they did at school isn't homework. Do you know what it is? So we found out through the brain research too that if you allow your child to come home from school, within 4 hours of them coming home from school, they have to go outside and play for 45 minutes at a minimum. Then all the information given to them that day is actually ingrained in the brain more than even doing homework will cover. Isn't that awesome? Get them outside, get them playing. So play is awesome. Nature, being outside, is actually the number one way to ward off anxiety and depression. And so if you take a look, it actually quiets the areas that cause depression in the brain. Also, being outside, what we found out is children and school-age children should be outside 210 minutes a day. It's 3.5 hours a day. That's the minimum for brain development and brain strengthening. The average in the United States, I got to change this number. They just released it post-COVID. It's 55. We're the only country that has that little amount of outside time. We're always about be inside, get your work done. Get inside. Schools are all about being inside and getting in your seat and getting your learning done. I wish schools would realize that they got to get outside. Academic outcomes would be so much better for our kids. Not to mention, we adults need to be outside 150 minutes a day to maintain our brain. How many of us are out that much? I'm almost there. So something else too, you ever hear of ADD, ADHD? Anybody?
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we found out through the research. We had neurologists involved in the research back home. 20 minutes of walking around outside is equivalent to me taking my medication. There is a difference though. When you utilize nature, it has a quicker response time. and it lasts longer than my pharmaceutical friend. There's nature for us. Go to the next one. Some other stuff it's hard to see. What we found out recently, they've been doing studies, brain studies, and vitamin D. Supplemental vitamin D is not the same at all as the vitamin D we receive from the sun. So if I don't get outside, the big problem we're having with children in our country right now is because they're not outside for that 3 hours a day, that natural vitamin D from the sun's not coming through my system. And what we're finding, it's causing cognitive development and affecting executive functioning in our kids. And then we're now seeing it can start beginning in adolescence. Just by not getting outside. Isn't that crazy? So some of the things I tell parents, get your kids outside. Go outside. Let them go outside and play. How many of you remember the days where you would be outside all the time and the porch light comes on and tells you to come in?
Yeah.
Anybody live that life?
Yes.
I always tell people, I saw the porch light come on and we'd find a way to be like, we'd ignore it for as long as we could. But then your mom or dad come out and holler for you and all the neighbors come out to find you too. So sunshine is needed.
I was going to say too, like, I always had my kid walk to and from school.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that's for everybody. But that is an opportunity to get some of that outside time in and provide some independence when it's appropriate. Just, something to consider.
And one thing too you need to understand is walking in the rain, being out in the rain and cold is actually a healthy benefit to the body and brain. You don't get sick by being outside in the cold. That's a fallacy. That's an old wives' tale. You actually get sick by what? Being indoors around other people. That's where you get sick. I was like, it's cold outside, you're gonna catch a cold. Nope, not true. You can go outside with your shorts on and nothing else on, and it could be freezing outside. Doesn't mean you're gonna get sick. What it means is you're actually probably killing off a bunch of germs that are sitting on your body at that time. We get sick from being indoors around other people. And so communication and connection, parents, talk with your kids, interact with your kids, be present with your kids as much as possible. It has a massive effect on their brain health. The more I interact, oh, by the way, take them out to meet other people, other cultures. I do brain research on racism. It would like make your mind spin if you knew how easy it was to end racism. It's actually simple to end racism in human beings. Problem is you have to be involved with other cultures other than your own. You have to go experience other people, other lives, other things. Get your kids out. Get them in the environments. Take them different places. Show them different things. Get them exposed to as much as you can at a young age. As much as you can. So, something to do. So, we're going to talk about parenting. This is us as parents. We have a couple of extremes on parenting right now. This is one extreme. One extreme is the parent who's distracted and disengaged. Always busy with work, always busy on their phones, always busy, like, hey mom, I did this. Oh, that's good, it's fantastic. That distracted parent. I call it the shopping cart syndrome. Go to Walmart, it's the first thing some parents hand their kids. Here's the phone, be quiet.
Yeah.
Problem with that is it's actually causing narcissistic characteristics to form in our kids. And what we're finding out is the more distracted and disengaged parents become, we're finding that narcissism has increased by about 60% in our elementary schools. And kids are coming in and teachers are asking them to do something. They're like, no! And all these new behaviors are coming out. Problem is we're mislabeling them as autistic. They're not autistic, they're narcissistic.
Oh, pardon me.
Yes, sir.
What is narcissism?
So narcissism is a form of human behaviors or a clump of human behaviors that's probably the worst group of behaviors a human being can have. It's everything about, it's my world, not yours. Parents, I've ran into this where they're like, we just let them do what they want because when we tell them to do something, it's too much of a fight. Yup, you start doing that, you're gonna have a little narcissist on your hand. Because they're gonna start creating a social world the way they want it, and then heaven forbid the person who comes in and tries to teach me the way I should do things. I will make your life miserable, I'll turn your life inside out and upside down, and I will always make it like I'm the victim. Like if you start doing something, I'll go cry to somebody else like I'm the victim and it's all your fault. You seen this happen in our society? Maybe take a look. It's actually very prevalent, especially in the United States. People are crying victim all the time rather than understanding that, excuse me, that'd be your problem and your fault. And so we're having this, and it's getting worse and worse. So parents, put down the phones every now and then. It doesn't mean you gotta be with your kid all the time. All it means is when you have an ample opportunity to interact, just genuinely interact with your kiddo. If you just recognize those times where you have an absolute, could be 5 seconds, doesn't matter, but it's just a genuine time to interact, take it, and it offsets all of this stuff. I hate to tell you, but narcissism leads into 2 other things. It can lead into sociopaths and psychopaths. So it's a group of characteristics, if not in check, as I get older, I might be that documentary you watch on Netflix about serial killers. I mean, it sounds horrible, but that's actually the group of behaviors that lead to that. Parents, just be there with your kids. It doesn't mean you gotta be there all the time, but when you get a chance, just interact with them, talk to them. So, the other side is the overparenting, the guilty parent. Oh, I feel guilty, so I need to do this for them. Yeah, quit feeling guilty when things happen to your kids. You realize your kids sometimes just have to have natural consequences. They do something stupid, sorry, you gotta deal with it. My stepkids, man, well, it's not fair they did this. Well, what did you do? Well, I had my eyes closed. And what were you supposed to be doing? Well, watching the video. Okay, so what do you want? Well, teacher was mean. I'm like, no, you had your eyes closed while you're supposed to be watching something for them. So I told him, I said, fine. He says, well, I can listen to it. I said, okay, here, go play your Xbox. I'm gonna shut your TV screen off. All you get to do is listen while you're playing your Xbox. Well, that's dumb. I'm like, well, that's what you did to your teacher. But it's funny because they try to justify why it's okay, and we parents, you gotta hold them accountable. Our kids are not angels and do perfect things all day long. They're children who are trying to maneuver the world, and sometimes we maneuver it a little bit to our own advantage. And so, overparenting, helicopter parents, smother mother, lawnmower parents. Problem with this is if you're overprotective of your child, there's some big issues later on in life. They tend to be the high anxiety, high depression. They also have the highest rate of suicide. Because if I've never experienced failure or hardship, and you've always protected me from it, as I get older and it comes in, it just wrecks my mental health. So, just some things to think about.
And
us as parents.
I was gonna say too, like, one of the things that when I, as a parent, I come home, I share my failures.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that's good. I want to, like, I'm kind of all over the campuses, and there are times where I have a parent meeting, and I think it's at one location, and I am mistaken. It's a Zoom meeting or something like that.
Sure.
And I come home and I share it. And I say, you know, the parent was so patient with me and forgiving and understanding and gave me grace. And it's not a bad thing. But when I share it, it's easy for my son to share something with me too. And it's not a bad thing. It's just like, I made a mistake, and next time how I'm going to fix it is this way. And I have and then I model my mess up, and then I model my problem solving. And then I also model like humanity, like they were fine, they were okay, and they were just like, you know, it happened. So I like to model failures because I feel like makes me not, you know, your kids think you're kind of like everything.
Yeah.
When they're little. Not now. I have a 15-year-old,
not
but
as a 15-year-old. Now you don't know anything.
I know nothing at this point. But but I mean,
Dad, you don't know a thing.
yes, I know nothing at all at this point.
So those are the two like extreme ends of parenting in the United States right now. Problem is they make up the majority of how parents are parenting in our country. We've got to get back to a middle ground. Both have merit, but only in little snippets. We got to kind of find that middle ground again as parents. We got to hold our kids accountable. We got to be rough on our kids when we need to, praise them when we need to, but be real that being a human being means we're going to screw up, and we're going to do some dumb things. And part of that is getting your kids to recognize their strengths and weaknesses. The first thing I do with my kids is what are your strengths? List them out. What are your weaknesses? Because if I don't know my weaknesses, I'll flail in life. Because if I don't realize that there are just some things I'm not going to be good at, and I'm going to be okay with just not being good at it, it's fine. Because when someone then makes fun of me because I can't play basketball, who cares? No kidding. I'm 5'4", and I hate basketball, so of course I'm not going to play it. Instead of like, oh my God, you're making fun of, and breaking down and having all these therapies because somebody made fun of me because I can't play basketball. Yeah, you're like 4 foot tall. Odds are basketball is not your game. But if you're not okay with it as a human being about the things you're not good at, then you end up getting spiraled off, and you end up actually getting led by the nose by the rest of society. and you put on airs, you put on things that you lie to yourself about things too, and then that goes down a whole nother path as you get older. So be okay. Your kids can't be good at everything. It's fine. And so screen time. I don't know if the video is gonna work, but you can give it a shot.
Oh, do I hit
There
play?
should be a play button right there.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll let you just watch.
For 89% of Americans owning a computerized device and us spending on average over 7 hours of screen time a day on technology, it obviously has an effect on society. But what about our brains? Here's some crazy ways that screen time is affecting your brain right now. Having trouble logging off the internet or quitting that video game? Research has shown dopamine, which is a hormone released in the brain for reward addiction, is released during gaming and internet use. This creates urges and cravings for gaming and internet use that are similar to the urges and cravings of drug addicts' brains. In recent brain scans, it is shown that gaming and internet use are seen just as or more rewarding as a feeling of cocaine. Although it is psychological addiction instead of a substance addiction, internet and gaming both rewire the brain because they provide immediate rewards with very little effort. This causes your brain to say, I want more after every single use. With more and more use of the internet and gaming, they can create problems in the important frontal lobe, which governs executive functions such as planning, prioritizing, organizing, and impulse control. Volume loss was also seen in the striatum, which is involved in the reward pathways and the suppression of socially unacceptable impulses. Another concerning result of internet and gaming addiction is an area known as the insula, which is involved in our capacity to develop empathy, compassion for others, and integrate physical signals with emotion. Ever find yourself on your phone in the middle of the night and taking forever to fall asleep? Studies have shown that because of the light from the cell phone, it mimics daytime and suppresses melatonin, which is a hormone used at night as a sleep signal for your body when darkness occurs. Just a few minutes of screen stimulation in the dark can delay melatonin release for up to several hours and desynchronizes the body's natural clock. The harmful effects from using your cell phone at night before bed can disrupt the natural body clock, can cause some hormone imbalances, can cause brain inflammation, lead to depression, and you're not permitting deep sleep, which is used to heal your body from all the damages it takes during the day. Another thing we see shattered by screen time is attention, loss in mental reserves, and overloads the sensory system. Research says that what is often the cause of explosive and aggressive behavior is poor focus. When attention suffers, so does the ability to process one's internal and external environment. So even little demands now become big ones because of depleting mental energy with high visuals and cognitive input, otherwise known as screen time. A temporary way that brain deals with the effects of too much screen time is to get angry, which boosts the brain's depleted reserves. So as an effect, a meltdown becomes a coping mechanism for the brain when too many senses are flooding in from the environment as a result of damage of too much screen time. One concerning thing about screen time is that playing violent video games or watching violent TV shows hardens teens. Sure, the epic show of murder mystery and fun game of killing people is cool, but research shows that the more war, violence, and murder that we watch or interact with makes us more aggressive and less sympathetic towards other people in reality. One other effect is that when you are watching these shows and or playing these games, you are more likely to hurt yourself in the real world during stressful situations. Something else that scientists see as an effect of screen time is the reduction of physical activity, which can lead to weight gain and a less exposure of screen time. Research also shows that time in the outdoors, especially interacting with nature, can restore attention, lower stress, reduce aggression. So put your technology down and go outside.
Go to the next screen.
Okay.
With over
Oh.
89%.
There you go.
My bad.
So I just put some new research that just came out, recent research on screen time with children. And here's what I tell people, as I put up here, technology is not inherently good or bad. It's how we use it. Unfortunately, we're living in a country that abuses it more than any other country in the world. Our children have the highest rates of screen time of any country in the world. Problem is the research we've been doing on this for years. We did it for about 9 years back home in Canada, screen time and its effect on the brain. Screens can be a benefit, but because we overuse them, they're now a detriment to growth and development of our kids. It affects my frontal lobe and cognitive stores the most, and my limbic system, which is all of my emotional regulation stuff. You wonder, people always wonder, when I take the screen from my child, they throw a royal fit. Yeah, actually, do you know why that is most of the time? If your child has an addiction, there's 2 reasons for it. Because of the massive amount of input that comes from a screen, it overloads my brain with sensory input and releases a bunch of dopamine, which is where our addiction comes in play. Problem with that is when you take it away, the real world doesn't have that much input for my brain, and my brain's got to go from 100 mile an hour down to about 10. And my brain, when it has to put the brakes on that quick, the only way to get input that will offset that braking is to get mad. Getting angry and mad flows chemicals through our body that help offset that speed of decline from input. So they're getting upset because their brain, you can't cut me cold, you can't just rip it out and do this. I gotta have, what we found out is once your child comes off of a screen, their brains need about 30 minutes to reset back to a baseline. So when I talk to teachers, you got kids on the computers in a classroom or on iPods in a classroom, once the iPod turns off, their brain's not back to baseline for about another half an hour. So teaching becomes a struggle, instruction becomes a struggle, getting me to do things becomes a struggle. So there's some recent research here, you guys can take a look at it. I put it up here so if you want to do more research on your own, there's a lot out there. If you want to go to the next one, please. I did put this in here. So friends of mine, we had a private practice back home. We did some research back home on this for about 8 or 9 years. And what I did is I had some psychologists and a couple psychiatrists and some neurologists involved with this, and we came up with the levels of addiction for screen time. I'm not going to cover this in detail, but I put it in here so when you get a copy of this, you can kind of look at your own kids and see where they may fall on the addiction scale. And so if you just want to like scroll through, the first one is preoccupation. There's the characteristics you'll see with the first level of addiction, preoccupation. The next one, increased frequency, some of the things you'll start seeing. Please understand, binge watching isn't a bad thing unless you do it a lot. Binge watching maybe once a week is okay, but when it's repeatedly all the time, it becomes a big issue for our kids. So, and right now our kids are binge watching mostly YouTube. Can I please tell you to get your kids off of YouTube? YouTube has so much misinformation and just horrible things for our kids to be seeing. And children, or what is it, Kids YouTube? I nicknamed it Pedophile Central. Be careful what they're watching on Kids YouTube. There is a lot of pedophiles they've caught trying to put things out there to start grooming kids. You ever hear of toy videos? Mm-hmm. Grown adults playing with children's toys and videoing it for children to watch. Yeah. I don't know about you, but that's just disturbing on a whole new level. But it's all the rage. Parents are letting their kids watch this. I'm like, why don't you get your kid to play with the toys themselves? Might be a better benefit for them. So some interesting things. They're watching people play video games online now. Go play the video game. Oh, I'm watching him for hours play Minecraft. Go play it yourself. I mean, I hate the fact you're on a screen, but at least if you're on a screen, I need you doing something that's interactive. Not watching someone else do what you're wanting to do. Here's where we have come. Ever hear of TikTok? It's the reason why kids are eating Tide Pods in our country. Obsession is level 3. And so there's some, so you can take a look to see even where you're at. So I'll give you a quick thing is, you want to know if you're addicted to your technology? So you want to know if you're addicted or you're at a level of addiction? If you ever forget your phone, as soon as you realize you forgot your phone somewhere, do you get that like sudden rush of panic, like, oh my God, and you got to go find it? Because if you do, you now are addicted to your screen. I left my phone in a school yesterday, and I had to go back, and when I knew I forgot it, I was like, I'll get it later. Like, I can't stand being that accessible sometimes. It's not healthy for us. So the next one is level 4, psychological problems start kicking in, some interesting things start happening. Paranoid, they're always paranoid. Is my phone ringing? Oh, I gotta go check it. I gotta go see it. Make sure nobody's texting me. Well, it buzzes or rings if somebody sent you a text. You ever see people sitting with their phones and they gotta keep checking it? Like, you're not that important, I hate to break it to you. Not that many people are texting you all the time. Let it go. But, gotta see. With our teenage girls, this is where we run into big problems. Social media. If you have any girls, you be very careful with social media with girls. Social media with anybody is horrible, but with girls, we gotta keep a close eye on them. So, level 5 is persistence to continue. This is where fights start happening in the family. Taking my phone away, and I'm gonna make your life miserable. So, not only does my brain need to get angry to compensate for the lack of input and sensory input, after 10 minutes, if I'm addicted, I start going through withdrawal symptoms, very similar to a crack addict. It affects the same areas of the brain as crack and heroin. And so, some interesting things with screen time. Chaotic life is the last level. This is where things are completely falling apart. Depression, anxiety, I call them the cellar dwellers. They don't want to come out of their rooms, they're scared. Whatever they get for environment, they get it off of a screen. Like, I can't go that, because you know how dangerous that is. Yeah, you haven't been out of your room in 3 years. But they start believing everything they see on a screen. Parents in here, since you have elementary age kids, let me explain something to you. Until they are 8 years old, every time they are in front of a screen, an adult needs to be next to them. Do you know why? Because until I'm 8 years old, my brain can't process what's real and what's not real. So everything I see on that screen is real. We are now in the second round of adults who have lived that life of lack of adult interaction and lack of adult supervision during a screen, which is what we're getting researched on now. Other countries are now researching the United States. They call it the sheeple syndrome. We turned into sheeple, because whatever we see or whatever we're told, we believe. We don't fact check, we don't look at the facts, we don't look at the details, we believe it, because we saw it on our screens. We have adults who are now affected by that. And it scares me, because there's a mass level of stupidity in our country. And I'm just being honest. I am one of the people who gets irritated with it. Look at the facts. Look at what's going on. Do your due diligence. Problem solve. Critically think. Don't just blindly believe what someone says. We've all seen it, right? Yeah, so stay with your kids so they can get that whole thing. There's a reason why about 8 years old they stop believing in Santa, the Tooth Fairy, and all those things, because their brain now switches to like, wait a minute, that just can't happen. That is impossible. It's you. I know it's a hard thing for us as parents, like, no! But that's when they figure it out, because their brain now realizes that can't happen, that can't be real. And so, next thing, diet. So I'll tell you the children's diet. So if you just want to go to the next slide, food equals feelings. Whatever you feed me gets processed in my stomach, which is your second brain. Believe it or not, your stomach and your intestines are your second brain. It gets processed, gets fed through your vagus nerve straight to your first brain. And the areas it affects immediately is my mood, my behavior, my anxiety, and my depression. So diet is a major factor for our kids. Processed foods are the worst. Anything processed is the worst thing you can provide to both of your brains. And the problem with that is, what's most of the food we eat right now? It's processed. Number one, it's the cheapest. So healthy foods, whole foods, things like that are what's vitally important. I tell parents, just work on the food pyramid with your kids. The food pyramid's there for a reason. Good news is you need to change your kid's diet. They're a picky eater, because I deal with this all the time with families. Kid doesn't actually have to eat broccoli to learn to like broccoli. You know what has to happen? It's got to touch my taste buds. My taste buds have to get a taste for it and a feel for it, the texture. I don't actually have to eat it. It's just got to touch my taste buds about 200 to 300 times. And then I'll start acquiring the ability to eat that food. That's how you all learned how to eat the foods you didn't like when you were kids. Brussels sprouts, anybody? Anybody like Brussels sprouts now? Yes! How about when you were little? No. So that's kind of the information. I put this up here because Duke University, you can look it up. They got great research on it. It's called the gut-brain axis, and it literally is food to feelings. Also, by the way, all processed food has a chemical added that causes addiction, which is why we get addicted to those foods. So some things I'm going to share with you. What do I got left? Like 20 minutes, 15 minutes? So I'll tell you guys, this part I started putting in for parents about 6 months ago. It's how our brain deals with behavior. And the problem is a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, a lot of even psychologists, what they do is they rely on programs to help with behavior. Problem is our brain isn't a program. Our brain is a massive amount of ins and outs that we got to understand. Our brain does process things. All of our brains, regardless if I have autism or whether I'm gifted, or whether I'm just the, typically developing child, every human brain processes information the exact same way. So what I'm gonna tell you is, for the next little bit, till we get out of here, the information right here isn't just for your kids, it's also for you. It's like a little mini therapy session with parents today. And you have to be honest with yourselves in order to fix what we need to fix with our kids. And so, do you mind if I erase this?
Oh, sure.
I tend to draw when I do this one. So, if you just want to go to the next slide real quick. Oh, so before she starts this video, I need to know, once you've watched it, I need to know if you've been this parent. So just play the video, see what they think.
Let's see.
I can't be the only parent who's done this to their child.
When you feel the first signs of a cold, use Vicks First Defense. It's a new microgel that attacks the cold virus before it has a chance to turn nasty. New Vicks First Defense. Attacks the best form of defense.
I tell people, my daughter saw me put together a training years ago, and I put that video, and she's like, oh, you did that to me in Target. Yes, I did. She was like 6 or 7, and she come around the corner with a Barbie doll, and she was like, I want this. I'm like, no. Woo! And I'm like, woo! She's like, shoving me back over. So, I mean, therapy works. She's okay now. So it's interesting because, like, I tell people when I do these trainings, it's not me being someone who does brain research or whatever. It's actually me as a parent giving you guys parents, talking as parents, because my biological kids, Tate and Maddie, are 29 and 28. On their own, doing their thing, whatever. And then I got remarried. I have a 5, an 11, and a 17-year-old now. I started over. Vastly different between those two generations of kids. Vastly different. And I'll be honest with you, I'm that person of, you need to get, life is tough, let's get going, let's do this, let's get this right. I follow the brain research. And nowadays, there's just this new wave of, it's almost like, oh, it's okay, we'll take care of it for you. No, you gotta figure it out. And that's hard. I find it really hard for parents to work on that nowadays, and I guess I don't understand. We gotta get, sometimes our kids gotta struggle. It's the only way they get better in life. Failure is a necessity for my success.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling Misty earlier, the brain research, I love it because this is where I freak people out. The brain research actually shows us it's impossible for a child to be a straight A student. There's actually no such thing in the human world of being a straight A student. Our brains are not built to be that great at everything. It's impossible. Somebody's not challenging me enough to make me struggle in those areas to see if I truly am good at this or not. 15% of our brains are wired. So 15% of the population, brains are wired to take in information and hold it really well. AKA 15% tend to be our A students. Because in education, as long as they take the information in and spit it out, woo, got good, grades are great. Doesn't mean I know what I'm doing or mean that I'm smart. Parents, I'm going to tell you right now, I do not care what your kids' grades are. You know what I care about? When they grow up, are they going to be a good neighbor to somebody? That's success. 80% of your child's success is actually their social and emotional skills. 20% is their knowledge.
Because you have to be able to get along with people to be.
Have you met those really super smart people in life? But they're dumb as, they're super smart in whatever area they're in, but they're dumb as rocks in real life. You have no idea how they even function. And I tell people, knowledge is important, but how I use it and what I use it for is more important. Getting an idea, schools were built to give us an overview of all the things that are out there and try and get us to understand what's out there so we can have direction to where we want to go. We've turned schools into, you got to know everything about everything, or you're not going to be successful. Well, it's a load of garbage. Do you guys know everything about everything? If you don't, what do? Figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
What are we not teaching our kids though? To figure it out.
Mom, Dad.
Mom, what is this? I'm gonna Google, Siri, what is this? No. How do you figure it out? We've lost that in our world.
Mhm.
You gotta tinker, you gotta try, you gotta figure it out. But when I have been taught that I don't have the time to do that, I'm just gonna get a grade right now, then what do? We got surface level learning in our world right now. We don't have deep learning anymore. Because where everybody's scared for deep learning because it means I might lag behind a little bit trying to figure it out. But it's exactly what our brain needs to develop. And so I always tell people before I retire, I'm like determined to change our school systems and education systems. Wish me luck. But part of it starts with us as parents. When parents understand that I don't care if you got the bumper sticker on the back of your car that your child's a straight A student at some school. No one cares, actually. Nobody cares. I care more of how does your child treat the kid who sits by himself in a cafeteria. Because to me, you're gonna be a better human being and more successful as you grow up. Have we not noticed yet that the most successful human beings in the world did terrible at school? Like most of them dropped out, most of them failed out of school. Why? Because their brains don't think in linear square boxes. Their brains think outside the box. Their brains are out here. And so I struggle through school and then I'm somebody's boss one day. It's interesting to see that.
Mhm.
Autism is one areas I see that happen a lot. The kiddos who do go out and be successful with autism, they're somebody's boss. Because they got it. And so it's interesting to see sometimes how we maneuver things with our kids. If I have the skill set to go out in the world, I think the biggest thing is your child ready to step out in the world? If we have this talk all the time, God forbid, we're not there for our kids tomorrow. Where will they be? What skill sets do they have right now? How functional can they be? Even if I'm 5, well, what skill sets does a 5-year-old need to have? Because my 5-year-old I get him up in the morning, he knows how to get himself dressed, he brushes his teeth, he eats his cereal. I've taught him how to do those things a 5-year-old can do. And so those are the things to look at as we go along, is where's my kiddo at? Are they ready for things at this age? And so that's part of the behavior. So honesty and straightforward is about the only way I can be with people. And so if you go to the next one, please. Here's the thing, we want to change our child's behaviors. Problem is we can't replace or change a child's behavior until we change ours. I always tell parents, because parents call all the time, I help lots of parents with in-home issues with behavior. And I said, okay, well, here's the thing, I'm gonna need you to start doing this. Oh, no, we do it this way. I'm like, okay, if you're not willing to change your behavior, you're wasting my time, and I'm gonna just politely step back. When I go into classrooms and help teachers, if that teacher's not willing to change their behavior first, I'm out. I will not help you. It's not until we change what we do and how we do it will a child change their behaviors. And I think that's a tough thing sometimes, because we always want to be that control, right? Oh, I'm the parent and I'm the teacher. Well, I get that. You're still the parent, you're still the teacher. You just got to figure out how to do it a bit different.
Mhm.
And that's always hard for us because change stinks. We hate change. No human being on the planet I love change. Liar. You love the change that came down because it still goes along with what you wanted in the first place, which means you don't have to change. Isn't that funny? Oh, I love it when things change. Yeah, let me change it so it goes against what you would like or what you believe and see how that goes for you. You still love it?
No.
No. So it's interesting how we say things in our society that just kind of make us lie to ourselves. Oh, I'm a multitasker. You realize that's impossible, right? The human brain does not multitask. The human brain cannot multitask. If one of the things you're doing is an automatic function or it's something that your brain learned to do automatically, then it can do something else along with it. But you cannot do 2 cognitive tasks at one time. You can't. If the 2 things or 3 things you're doing all involve you to think, what your brain does is just switches from one to the next really quick and you actually lose out. And those 3 things actually lose your full attention and ability. So people who brag that they're multitaskers, I laugh at them. I'm like, no, you're not. You can do one thing really well or a bunch of things kind of half, So that's the way it works. I know it's fun. People are like, oh. Because people hold that as a behavior. See those people who hold that, I'm a multitasker. You are not. So Couple of things, good change is difficult, but it's worth it. So what we're gonna do for the last like 5 or 10 minutes, I'm gonna give you some therapy sessions to help with your kiddos and maybe even help with yourselves. So if you just wanna go to the next one, please. We'll go past all of this stuff. First thing I talk to parents is this. When you start working with your kids to change their behavior, no matter what the behavior is, be something simple and easy, teaching them to do chores, teaching them what to do differently in the home, or it could be something where you have a kid who I was working with yesterday who tears the drywall off the walls in the house, punches his sisters. So it could be something that, it doesn't matter, it's behavior. To me, behavior is behavior is behavior. And so we have to decide as parents, am I strong enough and healthy enough to start dealing with this? Because when you start dealing with behavior, you're in it for the long haul. It's not a short ride. And the first thing we as parents have to do is, am I strong enough and healthy enough? Which means, is my mental health in the right place to start doing this? If it isn't, we have to get help first. Don't take it as a sign of weakness if you need to go get help. I've had to go to counseling. It's part of what we do. Because sometimes with the life we live or things that happen in our lives, we don't deal with things really well and we let things go. And our own behaviors interfere with the behavior change in our kids. Get ourselves straight and we're ready for our kids. So knowing if you need help, so here's some other things. Our behavior, I'm going to show you how human behavior works. You just want to go to the next slide, please. Oh, go past the video. We don't have time. It's a great video though. Here's your brain, basically. So this is the human brain in a very simplistic diagram. Brainstem, midbrain, limbic system. This cortex part is what makes us human. This is the only thing that makes us human beings. It's a unique thing to human beings, and this is what makes us uniquely human. It's also what makes us being able to deal with, problem solve, understand, regulate emotions and things too. But look at where everything comes in first. All of our input, from our sensory input, from everything out in the world, even from the inside, the way we're feeling inside, the anxieties, the depressions, everything else, all comes from the bottom to the top. Here's the thing, my behavior does not change till you move all this stuff up and help me process it here. If you want to go to the next slide real quick. So the cool thing about that top part of our brain, that cortex, just that top part I'm showing here, it is the only part of your brain that can tell time. Telling time is important to change behavior, believe it or not. And not like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 4:30, 9:15. Past, present, future is the time I want you to be able to tell. The only part of our brain that can tell time is the cortex. Where does everything come in though?
Brainstem.
Down the bottom in the brainstem. It doesn't tell time at all. The midbrain does not tell time at all. Our limbic system does not tell time at all. Only when things get to here that we can timestamp it, and that's where behavior change occurs. And so if you want to go to the next one. So what happens is everything in our life comes down through our brainstem and goes up, which means we feel before we think. We all do. There's no way you can get around it. Every human being that walks the earth, you feel it before you think about it. It's how our brains work because it's bottom up. Problem is this, when I start to feel something, if somebody with me is not helping me work through it, if it's a strong emotion or a big life event or an emotional event in my life, or my mom is mad at me or my dad's mad at me and they're getting mad at me, all that emotion's coming from the bottom up. If someone, after the dust settles, doesn't go back and talk to me about what was going on, why it was going on, and what I need to do next, I never get to process anything past here. I don't ever get it to the top where I can process it, timestamp it, and now I know how to change my behavior. What happens is, if my parents just get mad at me, or they just get after me, or I get punished for something, but they don't take the time to talk to me about why what I did was wrong, and what I need to do differently next time, if my teachers do the same thing, if I just get a skittle when I behave, or I get something when I behave, or I get punished when I misbehave, which is all the rage in behavior and how we deal with behavior mostly, then I never learn to process what happened and why it's wrong, and then learn to what to do better next time. And so what happens is, if no one helps me with that, all the memories attached with that episode with my mom or my dad, all those memories, all the sensories, even the smells. You could be cooking chicken that day. And I got into a massive amount of trouble with my mom that day. That smell of chicken gets attached to that memory. And if I don't get help processing that behavior and that emotional stuff and how to regulate it next time to the cortex, could be that I smell chicken a couple days later and that behavior just gets brought up, that memory gets brought up, and I react. You ever have people say, oh, his behavior just came out of the blue?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no behavior ever comes out of the blue. There's a reason for it. Because every sensory input that gets attached to that episode is also can trigger that memory to come up at any time. It's also why we have PTSD. This is how PTSD works. It's also how behavior works. How many of you in this room, you do not have to admit it or put your hand up, but today, still, there's something in your life you struggle with. Something in your life you haven't worked through the right way yet. And you have reactions to it sometimes. That means that memory's stuck down here and no one's helped you process it where? To your cortex. That's why you go to therapy. What do therapists do? They find where those memories are, they help you process them, and now you can deal with them the right way. Parents, welcome to all your kids' behaviors. Every one of them. There's no such thing as autistic behaviors or emotional behaviors. It's behavior. And children on the spectrum especially, because of the added anxiety in their life and the extra trauma they tend to feel because of their brain development, they have a massive amount of memory stored down here, which is why we get reactions that we do. And until somebody comes along and helps me process it up to my cortex, feeding me a Skittle and putting me on this wonderful token economy, if I get so many stickers and I get a reward, is not working. Parents, we got to find out where those memories are with our kids. Take some of the bigger behaviors you're trying to change in your child. Why are they not changing? What's the hiccup? It's because whatever is the hiccup is a memory down here that's preventing them from time stamping it, learning from it, and moving on. So does that help you understand behavior a little better? Help you understand your behavior a little better? I'm a behavior person. I've done this for 30 years. I still needed counseling and therapy to get through some things that went on in my life. Because sometimes things are that big, it gets buried and ingrained in here as a memory, and all you do is react to it. And because it's such a big thing, when you've reacted to it, all you want it to do is go away. And so you go, oh, I'm better now, I know how to handle it. Nope, you're lying to yourself. You don't know how to handle it. You're imploding other parts of your life because of it. And so that's where we sometimes need help, but it's where most of our kids need help when it comes to changing behavior. They got these memories that are down here, but if no one's taken the time, like let's say I turned your life upside down and you're my dad and you got after me, got mad at me, that's fine. Get after me, get mad at me, but once the dust settles, I need you or my mom or somebody to come in and say, hey, look, that behavior you did here, this is why I had to get upset at you. This is why it's not good behavior. Here's what we need to work on for you the next time. And so you start down that path of teaching me what you need me to do. I'm still gonna screw it up. Because the fun part is if you wanna go through probably a few slides, there's just a bunch of extra information you guys can read through. One more, another one, another one. This is all extra here. Down in that memory, down in the bottom part of my brainstem and my midbrain, if my memories are stored down there, which usually the bigger behaviors are, because the bigger the behavior, the bigger the emotional attachment to that behavior, the more ingrained it gets down in that part as a memory, and the harder it is to move up. So let's say now I had that explosion with you, you come in afterwards, you come to my room and you're talking to me, and you're like, this is why that is wrong. Here's what we're gonna work on. What we need you to next time when you feel that way, I need you to ask me to just walk away for a few minutes. Like just something simple. So you started teaching me that. Look how many more times you have to work with me on before it becomes something I actually try to do myself. If I have autism, ADD, ADHD, I have high trauma in my life, I have emotional behavioral issues, 10,000 plus times. Welcome to human behavior. That's how long it's gonna take to take those memories, get them out of that bottom part and move them to my cortex so I can timestamp them. Because eventually I'm gonna be like, I'll start to feel it, it's like, oh yeah, I remember Dad talking to me yesterday about how I'm supposed to do this. So you see now how I timestamp it, and I remember, and now my cortex is processed it, so now I can start dealing with the behavior better. Does that make sense? Kind of help you understand your kids a little more?
But like the first 5,000 times you're gonna feel that and not even remember that your dad told you anything.
Yeah. So.
Because your logical brain is.
Yeah,
like,
because that's part of it too. Is a lot of our kids, their brains aren't developed enough to deal with it too. So that's why it's a lot. And unless I got those gentle reminders, or sometimes the tougher reminders, then, but it's got to be when the dust settles. If I'm still anxious about the situation, I'm still like, ugh, let me calm down completely first. Let me just deal with it. And parents, another good time to deal with behavior is when I don't give any behavior. Life is great. We're having a good time at the park. You're like, yeah, you know, as we're swinging on the swings, hey, remember, you know, the other day when you did this, this, and this? Yeah, just remember when that feeling hits you, just remember that you got to do this. Have these conversations just at any time where I'm just calm and cool.
In the car.
In the car.
We don't have like
Yeah.
eye contact, and you're just.
Or the
listening
best
to
thing
music.
is, what I did with my daughter, because she had some troubles, especially when she was at an age where when their mom left us, she was 5 and my son was 6. So they started after about a year or so having a hard time trying to figure out why mom left. And so I remember we were at Walmart one day getting groceries, and this other kid was screaming and hollering, and mom's getting up like, okay, remember what we talked about, right? I know. I said, what do we got to work on? Oh, I got to work on this. So I used other people as you feel free. I mean, you know, Walmart's great. Go to the toy aisle, yell no, and just watch you see all these meltdowns here? So just something for you to help out look at behavior a bit different as parents. There's no quick fix to behavior. I do not care what anyone tells you. If they tell you there's a quick fix, they are lying to you. And there's too much snake oil salesmen in the behavior world right now. I'm just being honest. There are a lot of behavior people taking your money hand over fist. And the thing of it is they are doing the Skittle mentality. I can find a motivator for any human being and make you dance any way I want you to. I could do it for all of you in this room. But it's not ethical for me to do that because I'm not actually changing your behavior. I'm holding a carrot in front of your face. And I'm basically bribing you to do what I want you to do. It works well in the short term. It does not change behavior in the long run. Which is why parents, you've probably gone through how many reward systems with your kids. Because if it's supposed to work, it should work with the first system. That's the part I love, is people are like, oh, but they get mad at me because, well, you're against, ABA and all that stuff. I'm not against it. But I'm not going to solely use just that because it's a short-term effect. You're using motivation. So you're only hitting the limbic system and the reward system of the brain. You're not doing anything for my frontal lobe. And the reason why is because ABA is based off the behaviorist theory, which was only researched on animals. Rats, pigeons, and dogs. That's where homing pigeons came from, and that's where dog obedience school came from. There's nothing wrong with ABA, but it's only about this much in something that's this big to help change human behavior. And I tell people, I love all behavior interventions and all behavior theories, but I also am smart enough and I know enough and I have the background to know that you can't just use one way. You have to use usually 3 to 4 different behavior theories intermixed in order to get some results for your kids. But what happened with things like that is because in the short term we saw immediate results, behavior calmed down right away. Woo! It's awesome. Yes, yes, yes. Problem is, doesn't change behavior in the long run. And when that goes away, behavior actually comes back with a vengeance afterwards. And it's usually more manipulative because you've kept me calm enough, I can now figure out your systems quicker. And I know instead of a Skittle today, I get the bag tomorrow. You ever have that happen to you? So those are the things to think about. There's nothing bad about those systems, but you gotta understand that if you have that in place, you also have to have another behavior type of thing that's teaching that frontal lobe what it needs to know. And that's usually where people quit because it is so long. Think about 5,000 to 10,000 times to change behavior. Do you want to know what it is on average for adults?
Yes.
Us in this room, even disability or not, an adult brain is an automatic 10,000 plus times. Because we're anchored in, we're entrenched in the way we think, and it is absolutely the hardest brain to change behavior on. Which cracks me. We get mad at kids when they don't change their behavior. I'm like, you wouldn't change your behavior near as fast as they're going to. So it's interesting. So please, I gave you a lot of stuff today. Lots more we could talk about, but I know your time is precious and I don't want to keep you any longer than you have to. But you get this, you get a copy of all of it, just share it with whoever you want. If you need more, just contact me, give me a holler.